right, so let's get this started. Before we start, I normally start this way, where I normally introduce or tell the background of where I met with the speaker. So today, thank you for accepting, Pallavi, for accepting to be a part of this. Pallavi and me met on through a common friend on the platform that we were creating for TEDx. Um, she was the project manager. I was the host. So we did a lot of work together. It was a very wonderful time. I had a blast hosting TEDx. I'm sure Pallavi enjoyed being the project manager because she met and managed so many different people. It was fun. So that's where Pallavi and me. Pallavi, before we start, a little about yourself, who you are, what you do, where you are.
Okay. A little is a tall order, but I will try to keep this brief. Well, I think it's important to say that I started my career, so to speak, in a very traditional way. I did my economics honors, I did my MBA from IIM Indore, and then I got into the corporate world. I got into IT and telecom. This was the year 2002, so that was happening then. And I spent about 20 years in the corporate world. I moved into various roles. My last role was the manager of a global, center of expertise in an international organization. And then I realized that the corporate world wasn't for me. And I also realized that there are a lot of entrepreneurs. The term was only beginning to come up then, startups, entrepreneurs. This is about 2016. And I just feel that entrepreneurs are people who are very brave. They're very courageous. They're willing to let go the monthly paycheck. They're willing to, dive into an idea that means something to them. And in that sense, want to make a difference to the world. And that really sort of, got me all lit up. And I wanted to work with people who had those values. And what I had learned, the thing I had learned the best in my corporate career was project management and performance management. So I ended up working for about 4 years after my corporate career with entrepreneurial organizations and entrepreneurs. And it wasn't so much project and performance management as much as it was efficiency, how to work on the efficiency of the organization end to end. Now, here's the twist in the tale, because as traditional as my career started, about 15 years ago, while I was still in my corporate job, an intuitive ability opened up for me. Now, why and all of that is the topic of another life, but an intuitive ability opened up for me, and I started being able to see a lot more than one is usually exposed to with our five senses. It was much more than just gut feel or intuition. I was literally being able to see things that nobody else could see. And I started working with people, and the results were more ease, better decision making, less fear, less anxiety. I have had clients who've gone off anxiety pills altogether. I've had clients whose physical aches and pains not detected, no reason detected by medical science has, been relieved, etc., etc. I've worked with people with immune disorders and help them feel the relief just because their emotions eased up. And you see, the thing is, I see emotions not just from their experiences, their conscious experiences, but also emotions that they're not even consciously aware of, So 2 years ago, I realized that I can't live in these two separate worlds in terms of my work. And I started experimenting with entrepreneurs who were open to it, to using this intuitive ability to helping them with their business. And I have a simple concept: if my client grows, I grow. And that's been the focus of things. So I also do individual sessions, but I work with entrepreneurs on helping them understand the energetics of their business, helping them understand how the energy of where they want to go looks like. So what are the steps they need to take? And also helping them understand their relationships better with themselves, with their team, with other stakeholders. So that's as brief as I can make it.
Good attempt at it.
Right.
Wonderful. Um, uh, I put out a post about 2 hours ahead, promising that this was going to be an interesting conversation. And for all of you guys who joined, I'm sure you already agree with me. By the way, it has just started. Great. Entrepreneurs and emotions and intuition. My first question to you, Pallavi. It's said that the business world is ruthless. It's cutthroat. You either they don't mix. Emotions and business doesn't mix, is what it's said. Um, is that true? And do entrepreneurs always have to have that? How do I put that? That sales aggressiveness all the time. Is there space for emotion in business at all?
Well, aggression is an emotion. So that contains, to some extent the answer. But yes, the world is cutthroat. No questions about it. Okay. The world is cutthroat. And the more connected we are, the more opportunity there is, the more competition there is as well. So the world is cutthroat. And entrepreneurs have to be very focused on results. Sales is an aspect of results, you know. Uh, so the thing is, as we've already discussed, entrepreneurs are people who are non-conformists, they're risk takers, and they're innovative. That's their profile. That's how they become entrepreneurs, right? So they bring their values, their passion to work. There's no option for them. They cannot leave that side of them at home and come to work because they are working for themselves, they are working for their dream. That's what drives them. Otherwise, they would not be able to take the decisions that they do, on a daily basis. They would not be able to be their admin also, their HR also, their accountant also, their lawyer also, their, etc. Because that's just, it's expanding your bandwidth. It's getting out of your comfort zone. So if you don't feel motivated about it, if you don't feel passionate about it, and therefore if you don't have some level of aggression, you can't do it, But it's not about just being sales aggressive, because for an entrepreneur, sales is one aspect of their universe. You know, they have to think from a results perspective, and the results are different for each entrepreneur. That's my experience. So it depends on the values the entrepreneur has. They have to be in touch with their values, and based on their values, they have to define what are the results they expect. So one is sales, then there will always be a cash flow, so they have to have their financial health defined. They will have to define how they want their team to be engaged, and therefore hire people accordingly, set up policies accordingly. And they will need to have a very clear strategy on how to keep stakeholders engaged, whether it's suppliers or investors, or their brand. They have to have a result orientation, and they have to be aggressive about that. An entrepreneur has to show up every day, Saturday or Sunday or Monday, holiday or not, they have to show up for themselves every day. So to that extent, they need to be aggressive, but not just around sales, and aggressive in the sense of being passionate about what they're doing and clear. So they have to find a way to balance the emotions, because that margin of error is much lower for an entrepreneur. So
Perfect. Got that. Got that. So 2 points I'm taking away from you. One, aggressiveness, yes, but aggressive equal to passionate,
yes.
not just sales aggressive, but result oriented.
Yes.
And very important, are different for different
Yeah.
entrepreneurs. So well
And
answered.
and since I work with this intuitive ability, I must share with you, when I see the energy of someone who is, let's say, sales aggressive, because I've worked with entrepreneurs who have been sales aggressive, right? And when I connect with their energy, it's almost as if their energy is focused in a very narrow sort of cord, or a very narrow sort of entanglement. And the signature of that energy is fear based, So, what usually happens with someone who is sales aggressive or more focused on sales, let's say, is there is an impatience, because that fear creates the anxiety, creates the impatience. So, decisions are usually more short term versus long term. Okay. And what they usually deal with their teams as well. Okay. is that sort of anxiety and burnout. So they're constantly having to deal with the fires instead of being able to sit back and strategize from an overall perspective. So what happens when I'm working with an entrepreneur or an individual who's very focused on one aspect of their life, versus looking at a holistic picture, is I need to help them detach from the sense of worth they feel from just that outcome, and expand their sense of worth to mean a lot more to them than just this narrow aspect. It's, tackling that belief system. So that's from the intuitive perspective.
And by short term, you're saying most likely that particular sale, get that one sale done, and you're not being able to look at the larger picture.
Yeah, so
And that's why
yeah,
most of the actions go short term.
correct. You're not thinking of, your supplier base. You're not thinking of your working capital, the ability. You're not thinking of your long-term profitability. You're not thinking of the examples you're setting up for your pricing, because it's very related to this one contract, this one sale.
Very interesting. Guys, for everyone who's joined in, I hope you're seeing the swing of where this conversation is going. We started with intuition, we spoke about sales aggressiveness, and now we've reached at how entrepreneurs cannot be short term oriented, but have to be result and long term oriented. Super answer from where we started. Uh, Another emotion, empathy. A lot of entrepreneurs, let's just not say entrepreneurs, let's just say leaders and managers, because they are on the spot focused, like you said, just that one sale, just that short term plan. They come across as not having that one emotion, which is empathy, which as a leader, I think is very important when it comes to teams at least. But for an entrepreneur, the business is new, it's small, it's probably just starting. Like you said, the entrepreneur is always, he's the CEO, he's the accountant, he's the HR, he's doing so much at that time. It's probably very challenging to have empathy in all of that. How does an entrepreneur manage that?
Okay. Hashtag controversial response. Empathy is actually a very dangerous emotion for everybody, not just an entrepreneur. Okay. Empathy, when it isn't balanced with a healthy sense of self, is it can sabotage a person in all their relationships. So the thing is that empathy is supposed to mean that you can feel more than your own emotion. Okay? Empathy has been used to mean respect, understanding, balance, things like that, which it does not mean. Okay? So you can imagine the situation of a person who can feel another person's emotions or the emotions of people around them, right? If they do not have healthy boundaries for themselves, they will never be able to take decisions that are in line with their own intuition, their own gut feel. And for an entrepreneur, decision making and quick, good decision making is key. Sometimes for an entrepreneur, decision making is more important than whether it is a good decision, because you just have to keep, pace with the level at which your world is running at. So I'm not saying that entrepreneurs should not make good decisions. Obviously, that's the whole point of being successful, that you make good decisions. But what I'm trying to say here is that if you are constantly looking at what everybody else is thinking and feeling, you cannot make those decisions at the speed that you need to make. So empathy for me is not an emotion an entrepreneur should have. Okay. Trust in themselves, that is important for an entrepreneur to have trust in themselves. Okay. Respect for others, that is very important for an entrepreneur to have. Okay. And the ability to balance and detach from either excitement or anxiety. Okay. So if you look at neuroscience, if you look at neuroscience and the work in applied neuroscience, what they say is that the moment of insight, the moment of an idea, is when someone is reasonably calm. Okay, it's and we all experience that, right? We get our ideas in the shower, we get our ideas on a walk, we get our ideas right before we wake up in the morning, things like that. We get them when we are emotionally neutral. Okay, and an important aspect to insight is to have done all your research. Okay, so you have to do your research, you have to look at the data, you have to look at the statistics, you have to talk to people, get their opinions, etc., etc. But that moment of decision has to be that insight, that clarity, that not even a gut feeling, because a gut feeling, and we'll talk about that later, but that moment of insight has to be very clear. And that can only happen when an entrepreneur is fully aligned with themselves and their principles. It cannot happen when they are embroiled in other people's emotions. So that would be my response.
Never really thought of it from that way, but yeah, you're absolutely right. We're not thinking of empathy the way you just explained it. We're thinking of empathy as the other things that you spoke of. But summarizing this one, empathy can be a dangerous emotion. You don't check it, you're sabotaging relationships. It means that you are feeling other people's emotions while you are probably not in complete control of your own. And that itself is so disturbing, right?
Yeah.
So instead of that, trust in yourself, have respect for others. Um, and most important, the last part, which you said, is that neuroscience. The moment of an idea is usually when you're calm the
Yeah.
most. Um, lots of points from this one question. So yeah, so very well answered. Thank you. You obviously, some time back you spoke about how intuition, when you're working with an entrepreneur from an intuition point of view, what are the things that you come across when you work with entrepreneurs? um, I'm sure you'll agree that the world today is pretty challenging for new entrepreneurs, and not just emotions, but what are the other challenges that from an intuition point of view when you're working with an entrepreneur have you usually come across that entrepreneurs have?
There are, there are several challenges, obviously. We've spoken about some of them. From an intuition perspective, I think the trouble is in understanding what the word intuition means, you know, because intuition can parade itself as anxiety, okay, where you just have this feeling in your body which is saying, no, do this, do this, do this, and you think it's your gut feel, but it's actually the voice of anxiety. Anxiety is based on a belief system, which can have several different heads. It can be, I'm not good enough, I'm never going to make it. It could be about trying to prove yourself to other people. It could be an unrealistic target for yourself, which perhaps could be realistic if you gave it a little more time, things like that. So the first thing to look at is what is that energetic roadblock that an entrepreneur has that keeps them from seeing their world clearly. You know, one of the first things that I do with the entrepreneurs I work with, one of the first things I do is I tell them, is I open up an Excel sheet with them and I make them give me a list of all their ideas, every single one of them. We just empty their minds out. Okay. And then the second thing that I do with them is I ask them what they want to see themselves as. And they sound silly because, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, but I don't ask them those questions. I say, if everything was possible, then who would you like to see yourself as? And I take them through an energetic process of doing this, you know, and their goals are usually, I feel content, I feel free, I feel, those sort of things. So then we have to look at what is it that is stopping them from feeling that way right now. They've already taken this leap of faith. They're already, they've already got their idea out there. They're already swimming against the current. They're already doing stuff that the majority of the world is afraid to do. So what is stopping them from feeling that freedom right now? And if they could feel it right then and there, how would that change their decision making process? So that's what I work with them on, because it's really important that they are able to take fact based decisions, but at the end of the day, their own decisions, because they are doing what lights them up. They are the only person in a situation that can take a decision that is good for the organization as a result. Okay.
Very true.
And yeah, and the thing is, the flip side to intuition being about anxiety in your body, the flip side to that is intuition sometimes is excitement. You take a decision because you're excited, but excitement comes from impatience. you know it's very rare that, I mean, excitement usually, when you're excited, you want that now. It's that sort of a thing. And this connects back to the sales aggressiveness. I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs who make a decision out of excitement. They don't take into consideration what their team is saying. They don't take into consideration whether they have the capacity to bear the risk of that decision. They do it because they're excited. The opportunity has shown itself and they think they can, they feel it's a gut feeling. They feel that it's this leap of faith that their body is telling them to make, but it is excitement. It's coming from impatience. So that's then the other thing that they need to work on, how to find the intuition that comes from that moment of clarity, from that moment where they're not being pulled in these two directions. They're just being very focused on the results they want. They're seeing that full picture, and then they say, yes, I need to go forward. I need to stay put and hold that stress because I'm not clear yet, or I need to back off. Those are pretty much the three things that need to be decided on.
Very interesting. But in a daily life in an entrepreneur, there's so many things that's going on at the same time, right? He steps into office in the day. He's thinking of interviews he's got lined up for the people he wants to hire. He's got accounting that's pending. He's got client feedback that is going against him. He's got a lot of things that's happening at the same time. And while he's doing that, he has to have a clear head, so that he can take the correct decisions, the spot decisions, which are sometimes the most important ones. Um, is there anything that this entrepreneur can do to do both these things at the same time and do it well, at least
Yeah.
halfway there?
So the thing is, you can't avoid those situations of stress. You can't avoid that. However, what you can do is you can build the muscle that enables you to handle the stress. Okay. And it's actually a very simple muscle. But just as difficult as it is for some of us to go to the gym and build physical muscles, it can be as difficult to build that muscle. That muscle is one of awareness. Okay. We need to look at how the brain works. Our brain is divided into various parts. The two parts I'm going to talk about right now is the prefrontal cortex. Now, the prefrontal cortex is what we use for our conscious stuff, for our work. Okay. The prefrontal cortex is like a few business cards thick. It is the most recent part of the brain to develop, and it is the most inefficient part of the brain to develop. Okay. But that is what we use for all of our rational thinking. I'm speaking to you right now. You're listening to me. That's all being done by a prefrontal cortex. Okay. There is, however, a part of the brain which is the reptilian system, which is age old, and which is the part of the brain that processes emotions, memory, decides what hormones are being produced. It's called the limbic system. Okay. And that part of the brain, if you are able to be more aware of that part of the brain, okay, you are able to bring that system into your decision-making process, and that's what helps you with that clarity in your emotions. I'm giving a very simplistic explanation, so neuroscience enthusiasts, please don't kill me with this. There's a lot more science that goes into it, but basically, when you are able to become aware of your emotions, So let's say I'm having this conversation with you, and I feel nervous. If I'm able to say to myself, oh, I'm feeling nervous right now, it's automatically taking the blood flow back into my limbic system. In that moment of awareness, I can take action such as breathing deeper, or taking a moment to pause, or whatever else I need to do in order to bring down the stress I'm feeling in that moment. So the thing about awareness is it comes through practice. Right? There are certain things you can do. You can journal, you can make meditation a practice, you can go for walks in nature. All of these things build awareness. The other very simple thing you can do is for 10 seconds, you can think of the back of your hand. Allow your thought to go there. Allow your thought to go to the soles of your feet. In just those few seconds, if you notice what happens to your body, you automatically become more present in your body. You automatically start breathing deeper, and it literally takes 10 seconds. But the more you practice it, the more you remember to take out those 10 seconds, the more you become aware of what's going on within you. And then those 10 seconds increase to 20, to 30, to 1 minute, just because you enjoy it so much, you know? So this is something that just whatever it takes, there's so many tools available on the planet right now. Whatever it takes for an entrepreneur to practice awareness of their state throughout their day, it's going to be a game changer.
I think that's the simplest way of I've ever heard of someone explaining how to start doing meditation. I think that's the simplest way. Many people have tried to explain this to someone like me, who's I think we take a MRI of my brain. There's going to be like constant firing happening all the time. So I've always believed that I'm someone who will never be able to meditate, and I know I'm grossly wrong. But the way you explain how to start meditation, it's probably the simplest way I've had anyone explain that to me. So for everyone who's listening, it's probably something that we can start doing. Take your move your attention to the soles of your feet or any other part in your body, and you're right. You then tend to concentrate on that one thing that you're concentrating. You kind of black out everything else and then move it to somewhere else and somewhere else and somewhere else, and you're so much in control of where your mind is going now, which then means you can do that same thing with other things as well.
Say,
Simplest.
yay! Mission accomplished.
Eureka moment for me. I'm sure it's for many others who are listening here. So thank you very much. So I'm going to ask you one last question. From an entrepreneur point of view, it's somewhere that I see myself going as well, if I'm not already there. But is um, how I mean, you've already answered quite a few of those, which is keeping in control, you know, concentrating on something. But the challenges entrepreneurs are facing are constantly evolving from time to time, and hence an entrepreneur has to evolve himself. Um, how much of this intuition, understanding your emotions, keeping in check your emotions, how much of this really affects and can help entrepreneurs when it comes to managing their teams? Because that is one thing I know currently most entrepreneurs are failing at. They know their product really well, they know the service really well. When they are just about setting the pace at what they wanted to get to, they're now growing the business. They want more people coming in. Um, maybe it is of course they are not in control of their own self, but how does it affect managing teams if I am being able to control my own emotions? How does that help?
Well, I would suggest they hire someone like me, but um, so I've worked with different entrepreneurs. I've worked with entrepreneurs for whom people management came so naturally. It was a dream come true. It was a charm. It was wonderful working with them because, they'd manage me as well as naturally as the other people. So, it was a charm. It was their strength. And therefore, um, it was important to promote more than that. But then there are some entrepreneurs for whom people management feels like this scary pit of vipers, literally, because their whole system is very, they haven't developed that trust in, they haven't developed that trust. And so they get into the micromanagement and reporting and, not being able to let people work from home and things like that. And, when there isn't that flexibility or fluidity in the person and you need to move quickly, the real solution is to hire someone to help them. It really is the solution. I know, again, it's a controversial opinion because, money and finances and funds and all of that. But when you're an entrepreneur, you have certain skills that you are bringing to the table. You cannot expect yourself to have it all. There's so many entrepreneurs who are great with people stuff, but they're terrible with their finances, or they're terrible with their market stuff. It is normalized. It is normalized to hire people to do your marketing and to hire people to do your innovation or research, hire people to do your finances. That's normalized, right? But somehow there is this block against hiring people to do your people management. But without that, you are constantly fighting fires that you should not be fighting. You should be focusing on what you are good at, and you should be using some of your funds to have a team in place that can support you. I know entrepreneurial teams where the team would show up at 8 o'clock in the morning and not leave till midnight, even when the entrepreneur has said, I have to go for this, or I have to go for that, or I have to go for that, because the team is just so inspired by that vision and what the entrepreneur is dreaming about, that they themselves move the organization forward. And I think there are more and more such people in the world. That's why we have this, this absolute explosion of people who want to create content. Imagine you had a community of people who wanted to create stuff and the vision and capability of an entrepreneur bringing them together. Wow, power. But yeah, that's what I would say, that an entrepreneur needs to play to their strengths. If they're good with people management, yippee. But then hire where you're not good at. And if they're not good with people management, then it is important to find a person who can help them with that.